Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we will have a look at the Fide World Cup 2021. This is round 4 and this is the rapid section. So both Magnus and Radoslaw, they drew both of their classical games and now it's time for the rapid games. And now Magnus has the white pieces. And in the game, Radoslaw played a Nimzo Indian defense. Carlsen goes for what's called the normal variation with the move e3. Might look a little bit weird because you're boxing out your dark square bishop, but the good thing is that you can easily develop the rest of your minor pieces and it will be easy to castle very quickly. Castles, bishop d3, c5, and now the good thing about not having played the move knight f3 yet is that actually you can go for the move knight e2. It has a lot of ideas behind it. First of all, it's protecting the other knight on c3. Second of all, you have the possibility of playing f3 later since the knight is not on f3. And thirdly, you can maneuver your knight to f4 later on in the game. d5, now some exchanges in the center just like this, and now there's some pressure on the knight on c3, so Magnus decides to castle. Knight to c6, now the knight is no longer pinned, so the knight can take the other knight and pawn takes back. Knight to f4 by Magnus is putting some pressure on d5. Overall, it's looking at a lot of squares in the black camp. You can't really get it out of there. Something like g5 you don't really want to do because that would be way too weakening this bishop on b4. Since it's not pinning a knight any longer, it's not doing anything. So Radoslaw decides to put the bishop back on d6, which is far more natural. Bishop e3, and now since also Magnus has just moved the bishop to e3, I think it's a good time for Radoslaw now to take the knight because now the dark square bishop will lose a tempo. And now while Magnus has the bishop pair, the question is what will he be able to do with it? Knight to f6, attacking the bishop goes back defending the pawn, and also note that this pawn on d4 can't be taken because after something like this would be a very painful loss of a queen just like that. And now knight to b4, which is a slight mistake because after bishop to b1 it's not very clear what the knight is doing on b4, but actually the bishop on b1 is pretty happy to stand on b1 since it's still looking on this long diagonal b1 h7. But bishop f5 gets played, and this is quite smart because now white is forced to exchange a pair of bishops. So queen to b3, bishop takes, rook takes, and queen to d6 protecting the knight a3. And now black made a mistake. What black should have done is simply gone to c6. That would have been a nice square, pressurizing the pawn on d4, and overall the knight is happy on c6. But instead in the game knight a6 was played, which is a little bit weird because the knight is clearly standing on the edge of the board and it's not easy to reroute it back into the game. The rook gets active, queen to d7, and after this move bishop f4 I think it's clear which minor piece is better. Especially if we look at all the squares the knight can possibly go to, we're actually controlling all of these squares. So it's not easy for the black knight to get into the game by any means. The rook gets active, and now a very nice move by Carlsen. Queen to g3, and this is really a multi-purpose move. First of all, the queen and the bishop are coordinating very nicely to actually keep the black knight on the a6 square. And second of all, white is putting pressure on the black king. So let's have a look. f6, and now Magnus goes for this plan of pushing the h pawn. h4, rook takes, and rook to c8. We have some more exchanges, and now b4. There is simply no move for this black knight to do. This black knight is completely boxed out of the game because all of white's pieces are controlling all of these squares, which is so nice. b5, h5, now trying to create weaknesses in the black's position. Queen to d7, and now queen to f3. And the funny thing is that it's still impossible to move the knight since this pawn on d5 would be hanging. You can't possibly play something like knight to c7 because after bishop takes and queen takes we can simply grab this pawn with check. Instead, black goes for h6 and we have queen to c3, which is still making sure that the black knight simply can't do anything. And this is such a nice play by Magnus. Queen f5 and now simply g3. And this is such a nice move because note that this pawn is not hanging since queen to c8 and black loses the knight on a6, so you can't do that. Black goes for queen to d7 and it's clear that in this position there is simply nothing to do for the black pieces and Magnus can simply keep improving his position. Queen to c2 and king to f8. And this might have been a slight mistake because now Magnus has a clear plan. Queen to h7. And now believe believe it or not, but there is actually nothing to do against this move, bishop to h6. Knight to c7, this is the best move in the position. You have to bring your knight into the game because playing a knight down is really not what you want to do, but at a high price of losing the pawn on h6. And of course note that you can't take the bishop because the queen on d7 would be hanging. Queen g4 was played, and now we have bishop back, consolidating the white's position. Knight to e6, and now in this position we have amazing positional play by Magnus. First giving a check, and the king goes to f7. And in this position I still remember the guys on chess24 discussing whether Magnus should go queen a8, attacking both of these pawns, or queen to b8, right, attacking these pawns. But instead Magnus is even more precise. He goes for this move, queen to c8. You can't take the pawn because the queen is hanging on g4. Black needs to get out of the pin. There is nothing else to do, queen e4. But now simply taking up this pawn like this, queen d7, king g8, and queen a7, as well as defending the pawn on d4. Magnus goes on to win another pawn, knight to g5, and Magnus takes the knight on g5. And why does Magnus do so? Well, first of all, we have some checks, but it will be clear in a minute, because after pawn takes back, now you can see that the black's structure is weakened. Now Magnus goes on to give some more checks. He doesn't even pick up this pawn on b5. No, instead he gives some more checks, just like this. And now in this position, Magnus played an amazing move to convert this endgame really nicely. I want you to pause the video for a few minutes and play a move that wins instantly. The solution is to play queen to g6. And this is all forced because the queen needs to take, there is no other way. And after the pawn takes back and king takes, in this position you had to see one more move, and if you saw this one, I'm really proud of you. It's g4. There is no way to make any progress with the kings, nor for black nor for white. And since white has a pawn majority, right, the pawns on a3 and b4, white wants to push this pawn to a4 in order to create a passed pawn, and this is exactly what will happen in the game. By the way, in this position Radoslaw resigned the game, but I still want to show you how to actually execute this win. We play a4. If black goes on to take this pawn, then we go there, and this is gonna be a pretty easy win because we will be able to take other pawns and we will be able to push both of them. And if needed, we could also pick up the pawns on g5 or g7, but 2 pawns to promote is more than enough to win. And in this position, if black would decide not to take but instead play something like king to b7, we simply go for a5. Now black needs to keep standing close to this pawn. If not, this pawn will simply be able to promote. White can simply go around to the other side of the board, which is pretty funny. And after all of these moves, white ultimately will be able, with all of these passed pawns, to win the game. So I thought this was a very nice game. Congrats to Magnus for this win. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe to my channel. That would really mean a lot to me. And with that said, I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye!